Okay, hello Change Program people. This is episode 3 of a basically kind of a new series where I'm going to explain my sieved down 4 nutritional plans, and this one is called Metabolic Enhancement, and the key component of it is fasted training, so I want to touch on that. Now, going back to the idea of breaking it down and making it as simple as possible, the honest truth is, if we're going to get into the detail of it, there's no real way of backing around. There's a lot of science to that, a lot of human biology, so I will touch on that, but I thought let me approach it in a couple of ways then. I'm going to do it in maybe give you a bit of a background of a story approach, a bit of narrative, and then, you know, hopefully you, depending on your preferences, will take something from it. So, enough of the waffle, let me get on to it. Now, one of the things I want to start off by explaining is we often fixate on the number on the scale when we're dealing with losing weight. So I just want to break that down, because there are 3 basic areas that we're going to lose weight from. We're not going to lose bone weight, or we're going to lose weight from our fat, from water, or muscle. And this is important to think about when we think about a lot of extreme loss, for example, a lot of extreme weight loss. Obviously, there's going to be both water and fat loss, and there's also going to be muscle loss within that. And one of the things to think about with muscle is it's the primary, or it's the number 1 factor in our resting metabolic rate. If we think about muscle as fire in the body, just walking around, a person that's more muscle will just, on average, burn more calories than someone with less muscle, because it takes muscle to burn, to use. And muscle's just good for lots of other reasons, but just fat, straight weight loss. We want to look at ways of retaining, with losing weight whilst retaining muscle. That's kind of the gold standard, or as much muscle as you want. People have different goals. For example, so going back to combat sports, I might have mentioned this before, but doing jiu-jitsu. So the idea is basically just around, you just got to weigh in, you just got to hit the number on the scale. However, within that, it's nuanced. So you want to be lean, but you want to retain muscle. But then again, you might not want too much muscle because it requires oxygen, and if you've got to last a long time, that can tire you out. So, quick example, and this is not me. This is not me acting too vain, honestly, but it's just an example I could quickly find in that. So, I know I dropped weight for a certain competition, so I know I'm at 86 kilos at that point, and I'm 76 kilos at that point. Now, what I would say is this person undoubtedly is going to have a bit more muscle than this person, but even just in terms of aesthetics, the point about fat loss is, just aesthetically, it's easier to look better because there's no fat obscuring the muscle. This guy might be a little bit stronger, but in actual fact, when I competed at 76, I actually won the absolute tournament, so the open weight. So my jiu-jitsu actually improved, and that's because of and a couple of words that are a little bit mealy-mouthed, but they're very important just in terms of health and movement, and that is agility and efficiency. Being just lighter ratio to muscle, being efficient and agile, and how our body intelligence connects with that, and moving swifter. It's such a powerful component in health and fitness. So being lean, just in terms of aesthetics, is actually the key. So losing fat, not water, losing fat, so that you can sculpt out the muscle is what most people are looking for, but it's also just good for efficiency and general health. So that's where we want to work. Now, getting into the idea of fasted training, what fasted training is good at, it's very good at weight loss, fat loss. Very good for fat loss, right? I want to emphasize that. That's what it's excellent for. And under the right conditions, it's excellent for muscle maintenance while you're losing weight, because lots of big weight losses, as I mentioned before, incur lots of some muscle loss. Fasted training is good. It's definitely good for muscle preservation, and it can, under the right conditions, can be good for muscle growth as well. So I want to go into the explanation of fasted training, and I'm going to do it, and that's where the science comes in, because there's no real getting away from it, because it's about doing the 2 in conjunction. The concert, the effect of having them both together is very powerful. So there's 2 things: there's fasting, there's training. I'm going to explain them. This is where it gets a little science there, and how they work together, and leave you with that. So let's look at fasting. The key to fasting is, one of the keys to fasting is, in terms of fat loss, is it increases our hormone sensitive lipase substation numbers. So if you think of, hormone sensitive lipase, think of it like a substation. It's in the cells. That's the only place where lipolysis, fat mobilization, can occur. Breaking down fats, fatty acids, triglycerides into usable form. So that it can't happen without human sensitive lipase. While we fast, depending on how long the fast is, but while we fast, we just increase the number of human sensitive lipase. Combine that with the big increase of glucagon, which is the opposite of insulin. I mentioned before, insulin is like an absorptive storage hormone telling us to suck in energy. Glucagon is the opposite. It's releasing energy, right? So that working in concert with human sensitive lipase happens while we're fasting, and that just greatly increases our ability to burn fat. Not weight loss, not water, not muscle, burning fat. Combine that with what happens when you train, particularly fasted, but actually let's talk about fasted. There's something called intramyocellular triglyceride mobilization, which basically means in the muscle there are basically droplets of fat in the muscle. And I think it's 60% more burnt if we train that fasted. Now, that might not sound like a big deal because it's not the fat in the muscle we want to burn, it's the white adipose tissues, the belly fat and stuff, but that fat needs replacing, so it's like a cycle. And also we've got to think about the after effects of training, that 24-hour oxygen debt. But ultimately, after we've trained and we burn those muscles, fat in the muscle, they need to be replaced, so we become leaner by training fasted, and that massively improves if we do it while we're fasted. So that's how them two working together. So big on fat burning, not just weight loss, fat burning there. Second point, this is huge, and I've talked a lot about the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system, I'll keep that same story so we've got a flow. Basically, it's the fight or flight idea. Ancient man, we're in the jungle, we see a lion, and our body says, right, forget digestion, forget homeostasis, keeping in balance. All the energy's got to go to movement, to action. So that easy term to think about is adrenaline. We've got adrenaline from the adrenal glands, norepinephrine from the nerve terminals. All of those are just saying, I will need extra energy. Now we're already using our glucose energy, so where else could we get energy from? Fats. So so this is our adrenaline. When our body's under stress, adrenaline, think of adrenaline, it's an easy way to think about it. There's a couple of things happening, but these catecholamines, adrenaline, is making the body get extra energy. Think of it in that way. And the only extra energy really, well, there's two areas, because we're already using glucose, is fats. So it makes us use and burn fats. What happens? Well, that's what happens when we're fasting because we're under stress. Also happens when we're training because we're under stress. So adrenaline, that's why I like to do it in short, intense bursts. Under fasted training, they're working in concert together. So it's a double whammy. It's very powerful. Now, the other place you could get that energy from is your protein, your body, your muscle mass. But when you're fasting, human growth hormone hugely increases. Different studies show different things. Some studies show even 2,000% increase. It depends, but there's no doubt that human growth hormone hugely increases whilst we're fasting. And what human growth hormone does, some myths around it can make your muscles huge. It's not so much that, but what it does do, it preserves the muscle. It makes sure that the body doesn't wear away the protein or muscle to get energy. So it protects it. And that's very important. If you think about weight loss, we want to not lose muscle, we want to lose fat. And that human growth hormone manipulates the body to not burn the muscle, makes it burn the fat. Now, fasted training in general, resistance work anyway, let's just go back to strength training, has the ability to increase muscle size. And if we're combining it with spikes of human growth hormone, and it's certainly protecting it if we're fasting. If we want a muscle growth, basically we have to create a calorie surplus, which we can still do while we're intermittent fasting. We can still have a huge calorie intake in our window of eating, and we want to shock the system with our fasting. We're not fasting this, might be a couple of times a week, some people might be every other day, some people might be 2-5. But while we can still create a calorie surplus. If you want to grow muscle, clean eating, but you do need to create a calorie surplus to go for muscle growth. But just maintenance, keeping that muscle whilst we're getting leaner. You that happens if we do resistance training while we're fasted. Last one. This is about sensitivity. So one of the massive reasons to fast, after all said and done about that, is to leverage the body when we break a fast. It's that it's more sensitive, so we can do almost the most good. For example, when we fast, the gut lining, that mucus layer, like kind of snot layer around the gut, is very thin. So it gives us a chance to strengthen the gut lining. One of the most important things we can do for our health is strengthen our gut lining. So I always recommend bone broth or collagen because it can get to the gut lining and strengthen it. That's just an example of how we can, because our body's waiting for us to help it out. It's very leverageable. It's more sensitive. So breaking a fast is important. All bodybuilders and weight trainers know post-workout training is important because we're at our most sensitive. The body's needing our help, so it's ready to listen. So this is where we can manipulate in both, and these can happen simultaneously. If you're fasted training, you go into both, because it's more sensitive, for example, this is where insulin will come into play. Let's say, depending on what you want to do, you can create exactly the right environments with your fasting break and your post-workout meal. Because, for example, if you're really keen on growing muscle, because we're so sensitive, we are very sensitive to insulin, so we can spike our insulin, get in protein, and really force, after the wear and tear from the muscle of the training, we can force a muscle to grow back in either a bigger, a stronger, a more powerful, depending on your training method, way. Because we're so sensitive. We're also able at the same time to do those things that I talked about at the end of our fast to help our health, and we're also sensitive in the same way. If we, for example, the key message about here is we're very sensitive, so we can direct the body to do what we want it to do. For example, if we feed it fats, the body's waiting for energy, so it will likely, especially if you're using things like ketosis and ketogenic diet, it will likely use fats for energy and it'll help it manipulate that. If we want to create muscle growth, we might introduce some carbs for a spike with some protein to help muscle building. What we do not want to do is combine fats and carbs. Very important, because we're going to create the absorptive state with the insulin spike, and then we're just going to suck all the fat in. So protein, carbs, fine, muscle growth, great. Fat's good on its own for telling the body to burn fat for weight loss. Don't combine fats and carbs. Very important on a post workout break of the fast. So hopefully that's helpful. I'm going to leave it there because I probably waffled on a bit too long. Next one, ketosis, so I'll join you soon. Thank you.